Just a little shot of the truck. These are the brackets that I made for that rear transmission housing mount. And what it is, I've got them all drilled. The bolts are through them. It's not bolted down yet. I've still got to drill the frame rails. What I want to do is get a right angle drill and drill the frame rails. I can't get a conventional drill in there. The transmission's in the way, and I really don't want to have to pull the engine out just to drill those holes to put it back in again. So what I'm going to do is just borrow or get a right angle drill just to drill pilot holes through from the inside, and then I can drill it conventionally from the outside. But I just kind of wanted to show it to you. So welcome to part 31 of the Ford haul truck build. As you can see, I'm standing over here by my welding area, and behind me is where the cab was sitting, and as you can see, the cab is not there now, so you probably kind of know where this video is going. I started out by showing you the brackets that were mounted on that. The fabrication of those brackets were put into a shop update, and that shop update was posted yesterday. So if you wanted to go back and see the fabrication of those brackets, go back and check out that shop update video. The fabrication is in there. I'm going to explain to you about having to mount those brackets on, and then we're going to go into some prep for getting the cab reinstalled. So stay tuned. The thing is progressing, even though I'm still hurting a little bit. What I had done was painted those brackets for the rear transmission mount. Now I also had got these 16 millimeter 1.5 pitch nylock nuts. Now I didn't tighten them because I don't want to use them. I was going to actually pick up a couple of 16 millimeter 1.5 pitch regular standard nuts and be able to tighten this thing on there, but they didn't have any. I got to tell you, I'm not sure whether it's Fastenal in general or just this Fastenal, but I had problems with them. You know, I ordered these nuts. I went in and got some 5/8 nylock nuts that I'm going to be using on the finished product of the engine mounts, the 2 front, 2 back. I got some of them, and I had ordered these things, and the guy says, oh, it'll be in tomorrow. I'll just, he took my name, telephone number, didn't call me, or said, I'll call you tomorrow when they come in. That was on a Monday. Tuesday goes by, no call. Wednesday goes by, no call. Finally, Thursday afternoon, I call them up, and they says, oh yeah, they came in. But then I go there today and ask for a couple of standard 16 millimeter 1.5 thread pitch nuts, and they didn't have any in stock. Now, I might not think anything about it, but a friend of mine had ordered something from Fastenal and had a issue with it. They never called him. He called him up to find out. He had actually ordered 2 things for Fastenal. He called him up to find out if it came in, and he says, oh yeah, they came in, come in and pick it up. Went in to pick it up, and they only had 1 thing. He says all the other things on back order, and we're not really sure when we can get it. So, I mean, terrible customer relations, and you know, I mean, 16 millimeter 1.5 thread pitch might not be a common nut, but you'd think a company that specializes in fasteners or nuts, stuff like that, would have something like that in stock. What I'm doing, I kind of got off the point there. What I did was I put these on there. Like I said, I painted the brackets. I put them in there, clamped them in with welding clamps. And because I couldn't get a standard drill in there to drill through the holes that I had provided into the bracket and through the frame. What I did is picked up that right angle drill, drilled through it, and then I'm out here. What I've got is just a conventional drill, drilling the standard size holes back through from the outside, and putting bolts and nuts on it. But anyways, I'll bring you back. Sorry about the rain on Fastenal. Okay, I'm over here to the truck. I've got those bottom or the back transmission bracket bolted on. I haven't cleaned it up. You can still see the drill shavings down there. But I've got it bolted on. It's tightened up. These are not tightened up because I didn't want to run them nylock nuts down. So they'll still have to be tightened up, but basically it's in position now. What I did before I put the brackets on, I extended that paint out. I painted underneath the brackets, and I had painted the brackets individually before I put them on. Now, what I'm going to do is just get preparation for putting the cab back on right now, because this is all completed as far as I need to take it before I can put the cab back on. I just wanted to get all of the motor mount brackets and transmission brackets on and in place and kind of tightened up with the exception of those two nuts on top, but tightened up, and then set this cab in place. One of the things that I've got to do is figure out what the cab mounting hardware was. I'll have to go back and see if I can determine what it was and where they were in the videos. I've got a stack of them, and I know that some of them came off of the radiator housing mount and other places also besides the cab, so I'll determine that. But here we are, ready to get the cab back on and get it test fitted. Just a quick shot. This is a little wooden frame that I built to lift the cab up with. And the slotted section of the square part of it, what I will do is take the forks of the forklift, push them together, and they will fit in there. The long board will rest across the inside of the cab, and I'll take you over there and kind of show it. So over here at the cab on the passenger side, what it'll do is the board will span across here to the other side. Now the thing is front heavy, so what it'll do is it'll kind of tip down, but I can deal with that. I'll just take it over. It's on a skid right now, so what I'm going to do is just pick the whole cab up and take it over in close proximity to it, where I will put that cribbing arrangement that I made into here using the forklift, pick it up, and then back it in and position it in kind of in place. Now, I think my grandson is going to be able to come over here and just kind of give me a hand guiding it in over there. Again, I'm just going to set it down on the thing. It's not going to be affixed to it. Maybe I will drop some bolts through it, but again, it's not going to be affixed to it. It's all I'm doing is trying to get a good reference as to the clearance that I have on that cab. I'm sorry, on the firewall in relationship to the engine, and whether I might have to, again, and I know that I've mentioned this before, but let me just re-emphasize it. What I want to do, I have no doubt that it's going to clear right now. It's going to clear, but what I want to do is make sure that there's enough room in there that I would be able to get the valve covers and probably get the head off of the engine without having to remove the cab. So that's kind of what my goal is, and why I'm setting it on there. I probably should note that one of the things that I did, I took some rough measurements from those two slots are where the rear cab mounting bolt holes go. I took a rough measurement from the frame where those bolts go down through the frame cross member up to where the shifter is. And the shifter is fairly far back. It's actually out of that cover plate provided for the old transmission, and actually ends up back in here. So I know that I've got enough clearance. I'm hopeful that I'm going to have enough clearance to be able to get that switch gauge pod arrangement in there. But again, it's all speculation, and once I get the thing on, I'll bring you back and show it to you as it's test fitted. I'm just going to show you a brief shot of this. The forklift truck was still in position, and this thing was on the forks. And what it had done, and I had ran it up, and it's been supported by the, let's call it the door frame structure. What it was is supported on this long part of the board, and we just sat it over the frame. I just kind of wanted to show you that before I moved the forklift out of here and took this thing out of here. And I'll bring you back and show you exactly what is going on with the cab and positioning it onto the frame. Okay, here I am at the back of the cab. Now we have just set that cab on there. I shot that other clip showing you the forklift inside of the forks inside of the cab and how I had picked it up. So I have moved the forklift out, moved my picking bar out of it, and here we are with the cab sat back on. And as you can see from the back, I've got some board spacers under there. And what I'm going to do is, without going into detail of why those board spacers are under there, I'm just going to give you a walk around, and then I'm going to kind of bring you back and show you what the issues are with it so far. Now this is kind of raw footage. I've again just sat it on there, really haven't gone into detail yet about possible options or what there are. But let me bring you back. Let me take you for a walk around it first, and then I'll bring you back. But let me just interject one statement into here before I start the walk around. My grandson said, I really like that cab supported up higher than the original mounting brackets like we've got it right now. And I kind of agree with him, but again, I'm going to take you just a walk around the cab, and then I will bring you back and show you kind of some of the issues that could be arising after the walk around. So here we go. Back, driver's side. What we did was stick a piece of 1/2-inch all-thread rod with some nuts and washers on it down below to keep the thing up off of the mounting brackets for now, so that I can pull them nuts and washers out as I deem necessary, lower or raise it as I deem necessary. So there it is. That's how it's being supported right now. All-thread rod, nuts and washers through the existing mounting brackets of it. and the passenger side. I will explain that wooden block setting up on top of the head when we come back. I will explain the sheet when we come back. Okay, let me shut you up. I'll bring you back and we'll start going over some issues or potential issues or whatever it could be. One of the things that I did after I just shot this previous clip of the walk around, you may have noticed that the bolts that are holding the front supports were kind of uneven. So what I did is I used a pair of calipers and the outside calipers, and the reason I use the outside calipers because it's a lot easier to judge the distance to preset it than trying to hold a tape measure up there and get it correct. So I just use the caliper as a measuring device, put a wrench on it. So now the bolts on both sides are set exactly the same from the top of the mount. But I just wanted to show that to you before we get into the walk around, or before we get into the details of the issues that could arise from raising the cab or not raising the cab. Okay, we're over here at the front of the truck at the firewall, and I told you that I would bring you back and explain to you about the advantages, possible disadvantages of raising the cab. I like the cab up higher. It gets you up farther off of the ground where you're sitting. The observable distances and everything are much better up higher when you're driving. There is a couple of disadvantages. It's kind of hard to see. It creates a bigger blind spot in the front of the truck, but those things can be overcome. Let me explain, with that being said, let me explain to you some of the things that I had mentioned in the walk around. I told you that I had this block on here. That block height represents the approximate distance of the head and the top of the valve covers in relationship to the block, the deck of the block. So I am going to have to put a small doghouse in there. Now, is that going to be an issue? If you come over here, this is all just open space in here. I mean, we have the heater blowers here, blows out the side. This one does blow down and out the side there. But basically, there is not an issue of cutting it out around that head and valve cover. It is going to present a little bit of a problem with the gas pedal, but that rod and gas pedal positioning can probably be tweaked a little bit, as is the case with the brake and clutch lever also. So if necessary, I can move that. Now, let's go back in to the front of the truck, and you saw that piece of paper hanging there. and I'll try and get you up there and see if you can read it and it's not blown out by the light. The first item on there is cab mounting. I just kind of wrote down some things that'll have to be addressed if I do raise the issue, raise the cab. I have to come up with mounting between the frame mounts in the bottom of the cab, and that will not be an issue. I mean, I can fabricate them fairly easily, that I can get good solid supports in between the rubber grommets that are intended to be there to kind of absorb some of the vibration issues with between the frame and cab. Distance for radiator support and bumper spacing. Let's address them two issues together. What I'm going to do is throw a pick and pick in here of this. This radiator support comes across the front and it's bolted, the radiator bolts onto it. But that radiator support both gets bolted onto the frame and it gets bolted onto the fenders. So if I raise the cab, logically I have to raise the fenders up, which would raise that radiator support up, which means that I am going to have to come up with spacers for the part of the radiator support that bolts to the frame, which is absolutely no big deal. And then we'll talk about the bumper. If I raise that up, it raises the grill up, and what it will do is create a gap between, and reference the picture that I'm going to put in here, a pick and pick. It's going to increase the distance between the bottom of the grill and the top of the radiator, which is going to have to be filled in with like a body panel. Would have to fabricate a body panel to kind of enclose that gap between the bottom of the grill and the top of the radiator. And the last thing that's on this list so far, and let me emphasize that so far because this is kind of happening in real time. This cab went back on here probably about 4 hours ago. So I will be thinking about this overnight and thinking about it probably for days to come, and there will probably be other issues that arise. But the last thing that's on the sheet right now is the steering column. By me raising the cab, it slightly offsets that angle that the steering column is at, and if you remember, that steering column gets bolted directly to the bottom of this dashboard, so it would affect the angle of that steering column. Now it's probably not going to be that much, and it can probably be compensated for, but it's a issue that has to be addressed. So, what are some of the advantages of raising the cab? Well, I did kind of discuss one, and the visibility. Two, I kind of like the way it looks. Three, it decreases the space that I'm going to have to make for that doghouse to fit around the head and valve covers. But then it also creates me a space in here. Instead of having to bring the exhaust out underneath the frame rail, there's a very good possibility that I might be able to get the exhaust out to feed the stacks on both sides. And right now I'm not really sure. That'll probably be a 5-inch exhaust going out both sides, and I'm not really sure what the stacks are going to be yet. I'm kind of debating between 6-inch and 7-inch chrome stacks coming out the sides. But that would be another advantage, where I would probably be able to get the exhaust pipes over the top of the frame instead of underneath them. Now, let me just continue to walk you around here, and there is one other thing that I put up over here. It's always been my kind of intention. I've got to come up with a step that has to come here. So this white paper, and let me get the screen up and see if you can see that. What that is a battery box, and I just went online, grabbed any battery box. This one is kind of expensive. It's $755, brand new, but it has steps on it, and it would extend out 30 inches off of the frame rail and come out and be able to create my steps, 2 steps up for it. But anyways, again, just food for thought. I'm going to leave this on here overnight, and well, it's probably going to be on here well longer than overnight, but overnight I can think about things, advantages, disadvantages of it. But anyways, here it is. Oh, and the shifter, I kind of panned in here and showed you before. Let me make sure you've got light, and that black cover right there is where the shifter goes. So the shifter will come up through approximately right in here. So this is going to have to be extended up. One of the other things, as long as we're in here looking at this, and hopefully this will be the last thing before the end of this video or before the end of this chapter, you see the original floor pan of the cab was bumped up where the seat sat. Well, air ride seats, I can get them in low profile or normal profile. Normal profile being a little higher, which would put the headrest up close to the ceiling of the cab. If I was to raise this cab up off of the frame like I had talked about, there's a possibility that I could take this part of this bumped up part and smooth it out, kind of cut it off, and run a flat plate across there to get the seats on, which would get the seats, the bottom of the seat, lower into the cab pan. But again, these are only thoughts, and just something to kind of throw out there and be thinking about, and hopefully some of you guys can be thinking about it and leave some comments and suggestions maybe that you have, some different thoughts that maybe you have. So anyways, this is probably going to be the end of part 31. So thanks for watching, guys. Leave a comment, like I said. Subscribe. Share it if you like, if you think it's worthy.